Hi, I'm Audrey Meyer, and this is the Find Your Superpower podcast, the show where we hear the story of incredible people changing their body and mind to reach their goal and achieve a peak state. From entrepreneur to community leaders and so on, we learn what it really takes to find your superpower. Today, Eric is here with us because he lived the life of his dream. He found his superpower. So he's going to tell us a little more. But before we go into details, remember guys, grab a pen, grab a paper. There's going to be a lot of information here. I don't want you to miss out. And I want that to be beneficial. I want you guys also to live the life of your dream and find your superpower. You guys know I've been on that research for 25 years, competing on the kiteboarding World Cup and now being a fitness and a mindset coach. So I want you to learn from us. So grab your pen. And Eric, first, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Great. So before we go deep into your story, because you have a very interesting life, I mean, you are internationally recognized business speaker, serial entrepreneur, and you find your superpower, I guess, in Africa, right? That's where it started. But before I go too deep, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I suppose it does kind of start in Africa because I was born in South Africa and then I grew up in Canada. And, one thought that I have about superpowers is that, what happens to us as kids forms a lot about who we're going to become later. And so there's a lot of clues, like, there were activities that I liked doing as a kid, which I can now see that I'm following in those footsteps still to this day. And so I think some of the formative things that happened to me as a kid was my parents were white South Africans that left South Africa to get away from all the apartheid and all that stuff. But it meant that as a kid, I was often traveling back and forth and seeing multiple cultures and seeing different things. And I think that really prepared me for the sort of international life that I live now. And another thing is that, going through a divorce the way I did at the age I did, and with some of the stuff, alcoholism and the various things that I went through with my parents, I kind of became a practical psychologist. And to a degree, maybe that is, if we want to call it anything, a superpower, because in the way that we've developed our various programs around the world, we're incredibly good at transformation. My background, as you said, really was originally in business. I started my first company selling mobile computing equipment and logistics management stuff like inventory management, barcode scanning, that sort of thing. And I sold that business after 9 years. And then I spent 2 years lecturing on entrepreneurship around the world. And then I got involved I bought a movie studio in California, and it was the coolest thing. It used to be part of Lucasfilm. And so we were working on Avatar and Pirates of the Caribbean, all this stuff. But I kept on getting into businesses and I enjoyed them and it was incredible. But underneath it all, there were really two things that were always, always, always primary to me. And the one was health and nutrition. From the age of 21, I was fascinated by evolutionary biology and food and that kind of stuff. And the other one was behavioral change, why people do what they do and how you can stimulate them to do what they really wish they would do. And those things have been underneath it all. So when I finally made the decision I finally figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up 6 years ago. And 6 years ago, I started a number of brands around working with people in transformation because I really wanted to use what I perceived to be my highest curiosity or my highest passion or my highest superpower.
Yeah, I love that. And I know I've been fascinated by your story when you went to Africa, right? And you live with Bushmen in Africa and you were studying their eating pattern. So Eric, tell us a little bit, how does it feel as a white boy living with Bushmen and studying the way they eat? And how did you feel about how you eat it or how we eat here in a society?
Maybe one of the ways, I don't know if I can do this properly, I'm going to try, but I can kind of give you a sense of, this is me out with the Hadza Bushman. I'm shooting over his shoulder and he's prepping one of his arrows to go out hunting for the day. Wow. And, it's very much like feeling like you are in a time machine. And it's funny when you say, what's it like to be a white boy? They don't even see race. It's not like they're so not exposed to our social conditioning. They clearly see that I'm different, but there's no hierarchical stuff with it. But what really helped me, I first started visiting them about 10 years ago, and I've been visiting them ever since. In fact, just before the pandemic lockdown, I was actually in Africa spending 2 weeks with them. And I think that I don't want to romanticize their life. I don't want to suggest that they, show us exactly what our evolution was like and so on. I just think it's fair to say that the lifestyle that they live today is definitely significantly closer to the lifestyle of our ancestors than anything we live today. And so as a consequence of going and visiting with them, it's given us certain perspectives on parenting, on the dynamics of masculine and feminine, on food, nutrition, on exercise. Because you see, they have to do what humans always had to do in order to survive or thrive. They have to do those things. It's not a choice. And so it's really interesting to observe that stuff and contrast it with the way we live in the Western world.
I love that. And what did you learn from that? Because when you go shopping, when you eat, you go in a supermarket, right? You grab your food like we all do. And here in the Dominican Republic, we both actually live in the Dominican Republic, so it's pretty cool. But we go to the colmado and we grab, a butter, eggs, and the things from the shelf. Those guys, where there's no supermarkets, they have to run, they have to fight to get their food. How did you feel about that? And how did you resonate with food?
It's wow. If we had about 8 hours, I could really answer that question for you, but I can give you, there's a concept that I'm writing about at the moment that I speak about quite often. It's called the evolution gap. And the evolution gap, it's a theory of mine, but it's defined as, we look at it this way. Typically, animals evolve in lockstep with their environmental conditions. So as the environment changes, they evolve to deal with that, and it takes place over hundreds of thousands of years. And what happened with humans, probably starting about 2 million-ish years ago, maybe even longer, but let's say with the advent of fire, humans started making changes to their environmental conditions faster than our genetics could respond to them. And that opened something called the evolution gap. And so that gap has gotten wider and wider and become wider and wider and wider and wider to the point now where our lives today barely resemble anything close to the way our lives were when our bodies were designed and evolved by nature. So that creates a number of problems. One problem that it creates is that our ancestors would do everything possible to avoid doing any kind of physical labor. They knew that calories were scarce, so they were very good at being lazy if they had the opportunity. But nature didn't allow them to be lazy very often. Nature forced them to move around a lot. So their instinct for laziness is why Netflix is worth so much. Because you see, we feel very comfortable to not do very much until we're taught a habit differently. Like we have to train ourselves, whereas they didn't have to do that, because if they were lazy for too many hours in a row, they died of starvation. And then another example of this is that a lot of people think that they should go and exercise because, I want to get muscles or I want to get cardiovascular fitness. Sure. Bone density. Sure. All good things. But what they don't really understand is that our lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. So, for example, we have to get oxygen to the brain. So we have a diaphragm that makes sure that the air is pumped in and out. Then we have a heart that makes sure that it's like pumping all through the body because it's urgent and important. But lymphatic fluid is not urgent ever. It's only ever important. And so it didn't need its own pump because on any given day, we had to walk so many miles to go get our water, to go get our food. We had to migrate with the animals and so on. So our natural life was to move frequently, which caused flow of lymphatic fluid. But now we sit on our asses at work and we watch TV and we don't move. And so we have huge hours of the day where our lymphatic system's going, pump us, man, pump us. And we're not. And Audrey, I could go on for another 8 hours on weird distinctions between the way men and women communicate and parenting distinctions. It's like there's just so much to observe when you take a look that we evolved for certain conditions and now we live in different conditions. And I would put to you that the evolution gap is the source of almost all emotional and most physical pain and suffering on earth. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. And it's so true what you just say, But the thing is that now, Eric, what are you taking from that? I mean, you live in Cabarete, you're a kiteboarder, you're a father, you're a husband. So what do you take from the society you live with in Africa and use it to live with your family today and be able to perform on the water, to walk, and to enjoy your life? So what's the takeaway from that?
For me, the takeaway is to look at the evolution gap and determine where you can try to give your body what it really needs and to give your mind what it really needs. Here's a really good example. Right now, in the world today, there's a lot of fear. And when humans experience fear, they produce cortisol and sometimes even start producing adrenaline. And once they're producing cortisol and adrenaline, they become naturally pessimistic. In fact, the more cortisol and adrenaline you have, the lower your intelligence, the lower your understanding of logic, and the less empathy you have for other people. And so that makes you fundamentally selfish and a little bit more pessimistic about the world. So how can we reverse that when we start to feel a bunch of fear? Well, if you're in nature 100,000 years ago and you walk around a corner and you see a lion there, you don't go like this. You don't go, right? What you do is you go, and then you breathe like prey. You breathe shallow like prey because you don't want the lion to hear you. And by the way, I'm not saying this theoretically. I've literally done this. I've walked around the corner, there's a lion there. It's scary as hell. And you just go, and then you breathe really quietly. Well, the problem is most of us are breathing like that all the time because we're not doing enough movement to drive us to breathe properly. So most of us are living like prey. So it means we live with a baseline level of cortisol that's constantly keeping us under stress and impacting our sleep, which makes us feel more stress, which gives us cravings for high calorie garbage food, which creates some more stress. And so you can change a dramatic amount of your life by noticing that in the past, we were forced to do deep diaphragmatic breathing every single day. And so when you just decide, well, I'm going to do deep diaphragmatic breathing, either because I'm going to go study the Wim Hof method, or I'm going to learn the 5x5 method from WildFit, or I'm just going to go do some stuff that makes me breathe, then that one thing can fundamentally alter somebody's reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a speaker actually talking about breath work, which is huge. And I'm so thankful for that, for having learned this method. Like you mentioned, Wim Hof. And I know you mentioned WildFit. And I know it's one of the method you developed. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I knew it was about nutrition. I didn't know there was more breathing. But please tell us a little more about that.
WildFit is a health methodology that combines evolutionary biology and behavioral change psychology. So it's not just about food, it's about the way you live. The word diet means lifestyle. It always has meant that. Dieta, it meant the way of life. And Audrey, look, if you were going to go and get yourself a pet elephant, would you go to PubMed and read all kinds of research articles on what elephants are supposed to eat and then hop over to Harvard Medical School and listen to their? No, you'd watch the Nature Channel, and now you would know what elephants eat. And so what we do is we take a look at evolutionary biology and say, oh, humans are supposed to move around a lot. We're supposed to get fresh air. We need sunlight. Like we need sleep. We need physical contact from each other. We need seasonal rotation on our nutritional input. We need carb seasons and we need non-carb seasons. These are all realities of evolutionary biology. And so what WildFit does is combine that stuff with the psychology that actually allows people to make change. Because the trouble is that most people try to make change by going on a diet and never sticking with it and ending up gaining weight every single time and losing muscle mass every single time and basically destroying their health by being on a serial diet program. Yeah. So WildFit's really about a full-on health transformation. Our clients do the program 4 years ago. They're still living that way. That's the key.
I love it. And I love what you say about diet doesn't stick, because we all know that diet are not sustainable, right?
Yeah.
Like diet, I don't even like the word diet. I love when you use the word lifestyle. That's how we're supposed to live. And we're really blessed where we live here in the Dominican Republic, that we live outdoors, we have fresh food from the earth. Tell us a little bit about the way you live here, about the way you eat and the way you breathe, the way you move.
So the first thing is, one of the reasons I chose to live here was that, I lived in Turks and Caicos for 6 years. And Turks and Caicos is a very nice place to live, or you could just get the postcard because it's kind of just beautiful. But they don't grow any food there. And so it's very difficult to live there because all the food is being imported from America, and you don't really want that. And it's also, so there's a bunch of issues there. We arrived here and, there's fruit and veg just growing everywhere, and there's seafood, and like suddenly we're at a place where there's real food available. And so I typically focus my life on eating a diet or eating a lifestyle that is as close as I can get to our evolutionary history. So what does that mean? It means that I eat the best quality meats, poultry, fish, eggs that I can get. It means that I eat a wide variety of vegetables that I can get. It means that I eat fruits on a seasonal basis, but certainly not every day. And I drink a lot of water and occasionally eat nuts and seeds. And that's kind of my general. It doesn't mean I don't occasionally have the odd dairy-free ice cream. You know, I have treats in my life. It's just that I really understand that my health is far more determined by getting enough of the good stuff than it is by getting rid of the bad stuff. So I'm going to focus first on getting all the good stuff in. If I want to have a little bad stuff, then that's fine. And then the other reason I like living here is I live on Kite Beach. And so why do I like living on Kite Beach? Well, the name, you know, there's kiting right there, which is nice. But more than that, it means that every single day, like Audrey, I've been home for 4 months. This is the longest I've been without being on a plane or crossing a national border in over 20 years. This is, you know, and you know what that also means is I have not worn shoes in 4 months. You know, I barely, every now and again with some level of objection, I put on sandals because I need to walk right up into town, you know, that, and I don't wear them until I get there, you know? So that's one of the other things is I really like having this connection with earth and walking on the beach and having my feet in the water every day, making sure I'm getting healthy sunlight levels every day. So I'm really just trying to, as best I can in the modern world, close the evolution gap with my physical needs. So what does that mean? It means that I either do breathing exercises or I do activities that make me breathe. It means that I do the very best I can to get very good sleep, which means going to bed at a reasonable hour. I set alarms to go to bed, not to wake up. Yeah. You know, and then it means also making sure that I'm getting appropriate levels of sunlight every day, like not burning, but, you know, 10, 15 minutes minimum every day. And then it means making sure that I'm running my metabolism so that I'm primarily fat burning rather than sugar burning, so that I don't need, I haven't had coffee for 30 years. I don't need it. I don't want it. That's not true. I had 1 cup of coffee at Dave Asprey's house from Bulletproof. He's a drug dealer. He talked me into it. But other than that, no caffeine for me. And then I focus on getting myself really solid levels of nutritionally efficient foods. I move my body frequently. If I'm not kiting, I'm walking on the beach. If I'm not walking on the beach, I'm walking in the forest. I'm doing my workouts at the gym. And, you know, I think if we work on all of those things, not based on what somebody sold us on, but based on what you might see on the Nature Channel, you know, like based on what early humans did, then your body will run more optimally. Audrey, there's a really neat way of looking at this. The pancreas. Yeah. The pancreas is a genius organ. It's a genius organ. For part of the year, you might be eating a lot of acid-causing foods. And so the big, like, alkaline diet thing came along. Whatever. Here's what I know. If you eat a lot of acid-causing foods, your pancreas metabolizes and it basically borrows calcium from your bones, and then it creates calcium bicarbonate to balance the acidity in your blood, so your pH level stays fine. But then when you move into a season that is naturally more alkaline in nature, then it puts the calcium back in the bones. In other words, the pancreas needs the seasonal rotation. It also needs it for sugar processing. When you're eating a lot of sugar, your pancreas is making insulin. And it's like, okay, we've got blood sugar. Oh my, we've got glycogen. Once all that's full, it starts storing fat. And it's only doing that because winter's supposed to be coming, right? And so now what we want to do is realize that the pancreas also wants you to go to a season that turns that. And, you know, you go to the, like what, you know, we call spring in WildFit, or you might call keto, where your body is doing the other function. And so what I'm really trying to say, in not the shortest answer you've ever had, is the more you can live in accordance with the design of your body, the happier your body will be. And the happier your body is, the happier you will be.
Yeah. And I'm going to add something. The happiest you are, the happiest the world will be, right? Especially what's going on right now. Sorry for my French, but the shit what's going on in the world, you know, by having nicer people aware of their own, going to bring so much more. People going to start connecting with each other. Creating this energy together. So that was an amazing answer. So I hope you guys took some notes. But what I took away from that is really you sleep. I know sleep is huge, and we talked about the sleep. I also put an alarm clock going to bed because I like to wake up for the sunrise to go surfing. Yeah. Right? So for me, it's important to put an alarm clock to go to bed to get this 8 hours of sleep. And then I love how you say, Eric, connecting with nature, right? Walking in the sand, barefoot, no shoes, walking in the ocean. And you also talk about sunrise, or I'm not sure if you talked, but we talked about before, this circadian clock, right? Yeah. We animals, we like to be awake when the sun comes up, and we like to go to bed when the sun comes down. And eating food from the earth, so, or from the of real food, right? No plastic, nothing which grow in boxes. I mean, it's grow on tree, on the floor, and it's moving around. So I guess that's how I would summarize you answer.
It's you're absolutely right. It really is, your body has needs, get those needs met.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining. I will see you in the next podcast on AudreyMeyerCoaching.com.